Today is week 2 of our vision series. It's called Modern Faith, Ancient Roots. Last week we talked about the main vision of Awaken, which is creating followers of Jesus. And then these next 3 weeks, I'm going to talk about how we live that vision out. How do we fulfill the vision of creating followers of Jesus? So our sermon today is titled A Revolution of Love. And this comes from the first way in which we create followers of Jesus, which is welcoming others into God's love. That's what I want to talk about this morning. What does that mean? What does it look like? And then how do we do that here at Awaken? Let's begin with a scripture. I will be in 1 John. This is chapter 4, beginning in verse 7. And the author here, he's like an elder pastor. And he's writing to his church, his congregation, and he has some wisdom that he wants to offer them for the path of following Jesus. And it's wisdom, as we'll see here, applicable 2,000 years ago, but applicable for us today. And I absolutely love this. This has been a cornerstone for me in my faith and thinking about Awaken as a church. And what does it mean to live into that ideal of welcoming others into God's love? So it begins, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love, not that we love God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us." A few things here. First off, we could have an entire month, 2-month sermon series on these couple of verses, these 5 verses right here. We're going to try to distill it down for a 30-minute sermon on September 15th. Let's break it down into 3 different sections. First, the first 2 verses, 7 and 8. "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love." All right, let's talk about these 2 verses here for a moment. What the author, the pastor here is saying is that there is a direct correlation between our experience of God and our experience with love. As we experience love, we experience God. Which then raises a question for us all to think about here this morning. This is your participation part. You can't sleep yet. The question is, in your life, if you were to think back on those moments when you experienced love, what did it feel like? Yeah, what was that feeling of love for you? Just think about that for a moment amidst the speaker buzz. Think back on your life. The moments of love, how did it feel within you? Now, any thoughts? Yeah, throw them out there. Lifts you up? Elation? Peace? Warmth? Fullness? Wholeness? Wholeness? Happiness? Security? Yeah. Did I hear joy? Joy. Yeah, think about this. As you experience love, all that we just talked about, this writer is saying, well, that's an experience with God. That's a time in which you experienced the divine in those moments. I wrote a few thoughts down myself. True connection. About pure acceptance. Forgiveness, deep joy. How about care or concern for someone else? The love that you felt didn't just stay within you, but it's as if you kind of felt it just flowing right from you. And it felt as if, like, for me, it's moments when it feels as if my heart is being cracked open. Not literally. But it just feels like there's something, some warmth within, and it's just enveloping all those around me. See, in those moments, that is when you are experiencing God. If and when you experience love, that is when you are experiencing God. So what these verses are saying is that in the absence of love, well, it's as if there's an absence of God. And if something isn't rooted in love, we talk a lot about the Christian faith. What does it mean to be a follower of Jesus? And there's some varying views and different theologies. Well, if it is not rooted in love, then it is not of God. That which is rooted in love, it has its foundation in God. Which then brings me to, we have to talk about chocolate chip cookies. And I am going to need a volunteer this morning for this one. Preferably someone with no food allergies. We're good? All right, Heather, come on down. Let's see. Okay, we're going to give her a seat. How's that? I think her hand, she heard chocolate chip cookies, was like, whoa, my hand's going up first. For anyone else, let's give Heather a round of applause. How you doing today? All right. Take a seat. Now, a little more audience participation. Who's had a chocolate chip cookie before? All right, many. Keaton is a self-proclaimed expert of chocolate chip cookies. Now, let's describe a chocolate chip cookie to Heather here. Just throw it out there again. What is it like to eat a chocolate chip cookie? Gooey? Crunchy? Chocolatey? Warm, sweet. Okay, keep going. All right, now when you hear a chocolate chip cookie being described to you, how do you feel about it? You want to eat it. You don't want to just hear about it, right? Like someone could give you all the ingredients. They can talk about the texture of it, what it tastes like, what it feels like going down into your stomach, that warm feeling that you have. But you don't want it to end there, right? You're like, please, may I have a chocolate chip cookie? So we have a chocolate chip cookie for her. Well, these are grain-free. I'm gluten-free, so it might not be as gooey as you normally go for, but let's go ahead and just go for it. Oh, you want more? He's advocating for you here. Yeah. All right. Now, is there a difference between hearing it described and now actually eating and tasting and having a chocolate chip cookie? So in these verses, let's see if I have them here, or let's go back to these verses here a second. Everyone who loves has been born of God. Whoever does not love does not know God. We can talk about God. We can talk about what God is like, just like we can talk about a chocolate chip cookie. We can read verses about God. We could read a recipe about how to make chocolate chip cookies. That is all good. But what is being described here is something different than just talking and learning about God. It's about the experience. And when you experience love, that is when you're experiencing God. We could come together on Sunday after Sunday. We could look at verse after verse. You can go home. You can read your Bible day after day. It is all good. Those are all good things. But there is something deeper that we are being invited into here in these verses. Just like you can read a recipe, but if it sits there on your counter and you look at it, you're like, I really should make that. Well, eventually, one day, hopefully, you'll make it and you'll realize, this is what the recipe was leading me to. That's what the Bible, that's what verses, that's what talking about God should lead us to. A real, visceral experience. Now, let's give Heather a round of applause. Thank you for eating our cookie this morning. I think Joe just stole her the bag. Now, let's keep going with these verses. Verses 9 and 10. This is the second part. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Lots to break down here. First, let's talk about this. What is this? Uh-oh. Is this our first time in church? This is a cross. Now, in the ancient world, what did the cross symbolize? Pain, death, suffering. Yeah, in the ancient world, the cross was a symbol of power, of dominion, of authority. This was a sign of fear. If you saw a cross before Jesus, this was not a good thing, because you knew that those in power were using the cross as a way to instill fear amongst those that they were ruling. The cross was used as a form of capital punishment. Think of it like the electric chair. This is what the cross would have symbolized in the ancient world. And being put on a cross to die was a humiliating experience. It was dehumanizing. You were stripped bare, and then you were hung on a cross for all those around to watch and to see your suffering. So in the ancient world, this is what the cross symbolized. And this wasn't just true about the Roman Empire. This way of looking at the cross had been going on for many, many years before the Romans used the cross as a form of fear and capital punishment. 519 BCE, the Persians used the cross. Darius I, one day after defeating his enemies in battle, crucified 3,000 victims. In order to what? Show everyone he was in power, that the Persians were the mightiest empire. Do not mess with us. Alexander the Great, after a battle at Tyre, 322 BCE, crucified 2,000 victims, again as a way to say, do not mess with us. If you do, this is what will happen to you and to those who you love. The Romans, 4 BCE. In order to put down a revolt of the Judeans, 2,000 people were crucified on a single day. Crosses littering the roadside. If you were walking, you would see this spectacle in front of you and you said, whoa, I will do nothing against the Roman Empire. This is who's in power. You see the cross, and fear and dread fill your soul. One historian, Tom Holland, in his book Dominance, says this about the cross, about crucifixion. Crucifixion was not merely a punishment. It was a means to achieving dominance. A dominance felt as a dread in the guts of the subdued. Imagine that. Some empire comes in, takes over your city, and then begins putting your friends, those that you know, love, care about, those that are part of your tribe, up on a cross. Dread in the guts of the subdued. Terror of power was the index of power. That was how it had always been, and how it always would be. This was the way of the world. When Jesus walks the earth, this is what the world was like. Those in power used might, force, violence in order to stay in power. Now, who knows who this is? If you're familiar with your statues of Roman emperors, this is the Emperor Nero. Nero was an especially nasty boy, not someone that you would like to meet. In the ancient world, in the time in which Jesus walked the earth, the emperors, the Caesars, they were the ones through who you experienced the gods. How did you experience God? How did you know what God was like? Well, it was through those in power. If you saw the person in power, you would know what God was like. I want to read you something, a little story that I found quite interesting about Nero, about those in power, and how they were viewed, which obviously then played into how those around Nero viewed what God was like. It's from a book called Emperor of Rome by Mary Beard. Probably one of my favorite books that I have read this year. She is a Roman historian. Love anything that she writes. This one I couldn't put down. It was as good as your, whatever the number one thriller is. Well, hey, Emperor of Rome rivals it. Story about Nero. Nero, he would go out at night while he was the emperor. He would go out in disguise, searching out seedy bars, lowlife, brawling, and worse. He didn't like just being stuck in his palace. He wanted to go out and he wanted to experience nightlife. But he didn't want anyone to know that he was doing this. So he would disguise himself. He would dress up and he would just go hang out with the locals. He wanted to be one of the boys. Now, on one evening, the fun went horribly wrong for an innocent, otherwise unknown senator by the name of Julius Montanus. He was out with his wife when Nero, in his wig and careful camouflage, made a rough pass at her in the street. Montanus responded by beating the emperor up and leaving him with a black eye. Now, Dio, in his version of the story, points out that all would have been well if Montanus had then just kept quiet. If he had just let it go, be like, all right, I beat him up, I took care of it, I protected my wife, we're back at home, everything is okay. If he had just let it go at that, everything would have been fine. But many people in Rome were well aware of what Nero was getting up to after dark. People were catching on. And the unfortunate senator who had recognized the emperor wrote to apologize to him. He wrote, hey, Nero, so sorry I beat you up, gave you that black eye. I know everyone's wondering how you got it. I'm sorry about that. Can we be friends? Well, this was a big mistake. When Nero read the letter, the emperor simply said, so he knew he was hitting Nero? Hearing of that reaction, Montanus killed himself. No doubt fearing worse to come. This was the world at the time of Jesus. This is how those in power acted. They could instill fear amongst people. He's apologizing to me? He's asking for forgiveness? No. Montanus knew that forgiveness from the emperor would not come because that is not how those in power acted. If those in power are representing who God is and how God interacts with humanity, think about the view that most people would have had at the time of who God was. It would have looked like this. God is out to punish his enemies, to destroy his enemies, those who are against God, those who have made a mistake, those who are asking for forgiveness, apologizing. There's no mercy there. This was the view of the gods when Jesus walked the earth. And then through Jesus, we are being offered a whole new way of living and a whole new way of understanding God. This new way of understanding God. I mean, Jesus takes the cross and totally transforms that symbol. Because now when we think about the cross, we don't think of it as a form of capital punishment. I heard sacrifice. We think of the cross as a symbol of love, of mercy, of forgiveness, of sacrifice, of peace through a selfless act of sacrifice. We think about God's forgiveness over humanity and God not looking to get even or to punish, to zap us, but rather to restore, to bring new life. You see the cross and we think resurrection. We think, well, yes, I might have blown it. There's some sin that I've been involved in that maybe I'm carrying with me, but that doesn't define me. And it doesn't mean that God is against me, but rather the cross shows us that God is ever for us. And that God's mercy is bigger and God's forgiveness is more powerful than our sin and our darkness. So through Jesus, a whole new way of living and understanding God has now come into the world. These couple of verses, look at what I have here in red. Jesus comes into the world so that we might live through him. What the author is saying here is that our existence, it comes from love. We are here today, living, breathing, moving, all because of an act of love. Almost as if, well, if this wasn't rooted in love, would we be living? Would we be breathing? The miracle of your life comes through an act of love. It's God's love flowing out from God that has now produced the very life that you are experiencing. This is love, and I love this. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us. So this love that God has for us, it's not dependent on us. Sometimes we make it about us. And we think, if I can just do this, take these steps, if I can get my life perfect right here, well, then God will love me and I'll be worthy and I'll be acceptable. But what the author is saying here, hey, it's not that we love God, it's that God's love has always been and will always be pursuing us. That's where it starts. We're here because of love and we are sustained through love. Now, let's look at the third part of these verses. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. Let's look at that word ought. Now, this word ought, it's the Greek word philo, and it means a moral or ethical responsibility. It can also be translated as the word debt. What is being said, what's being communicated here in this letter is in response to the love that you have received, we'll now go and do likewise. You have been loved. Your life is rooted in love. Your very existence is here because of love. Now, because of the love that you have received, well, go love others. It's used again in Romans chapter 13, and it says, "Oh," or "Phileo, no one anything except to love each other. Pay back your debts. Don't owe anyone any money. The only debt that you are to carry in life is the debt to love, the responsibility to love other people." You know what this means? That you never pay off your responsibility to love others. It's not like, great, I did an act of love this morning, I'm done for the day. Now I can be mean to my neighbor. I can say whatever I want to say about them when they cut me off later on this afternoon. Well, that's not how it works. Because you never pay off your responsibility to love others. You have loved, or you have been loved. That love is endless. That love is always for you. And now your response to that, the invitation is, because of the love that you have received, is now to go and show endless love, I would argue, to yourself and to others, those that you interact with. And then it ends here. If we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. To me, that is really interesting. Here's the way in which I think about this. Who does Legos? All right, we have a few Lego fans here. Reese is big into Legos. Normally what will happen is he'll take a pack out. If it's one of the ones that it has a whole model for you, or maybe it's just a random assortment, you dump all the Legos out onto the floor, and it looks like this. And then either there are instructions to tell you how to put the model together, or you can be creative on your own, and you can create something beautiful like this through Legos. This chaos becomes this order. if we love one another, if we continue to live out our debt, responsibility to love other people, God then lives in us, and that love is then made complete. We can take the chaos of the world and turn it into order. Because we all know there is a lot of chaos around us. There's a lot of chaos in your life. There's a lot of chaos in the lives of your neighbors. There's a lot of chaos in our nation. There's a lot of chaos in the world. What this author is arguing is the way in which to bring order from the chaos is through love. This is why at Awaken, how do we create followers of Jesus? We welcome others into God's love, which then raises two questions for you. First, well, what does a person of welcome and love look like? And how do we become a person of welcome and love? I'm glad that you asked. I want to offer 3 truths in closing in order to answer these questions. Here's the first truth. People will walk through that door who are different than you. It's going to happen, and it's a good thing. Here's how I would invite you to respond to everyone who walks through that door or everyone who walks into your life. Yes, we're talking about Awaken, but this is bigger than Awaken. This is about your life. What is to be your posture to every person that you interact with? You greet them. You converse. You have a conversation. Hey, what's up? Tell me a little bit about your life. You show concern for others' lives. Tell me a little about that. Wow, what started that for you? Now, you don't have to agree on everything, and that's okay. But you respect each person as a fellow human. And when we talk about Awaken, you respect each person who walks through that door as someone learning to walk the path of Jesus just like you. We're all here this morning because we want to learn, well, what does it mean for me to walk the path of Jesus? You're asking that for you in your life. Well, your neighbor, the person in the row behind you, they're asking that for them in their life. We welcome others into God's love by acknowledging, yeah, there's going to be some differences, but we're going to love through those differences. And we're going to help others on their path of following Jesus. Second truth, people will walk through that door, and again, not just here at Awaken, you will interact with people in life everywhere you go, questioning how worthy and lovable they are. How do I know this? Well, because that's what we're all looking for. It's what we're all wondering. We're all wondering, am I worthy of love? Am I lovable? See, we all want to be loved. We all want to be accepted. And as we are loved, that's what these verses are talking about, as we are loved, as we are welcomed into God's love, as others come around us, have conversations, treat us like a human, and show care and concern for our lives, well, that is how we experience love. So I believe that as we show care and concern for others here, people that you know, that you've known for a long time, people that you've never met before, as you show care and concern and welcome them into our community, I believe that they will experience God in their lives. So a question for us to ask when we come to church, when we are going into a meeting, when we're walking down the street, whenever we come across someone, the question is, well, how can I show love to this person today? How can I show love to this person right now, right here, in this moment? And then a third truth. You need a community of others in order to learn the way of love. Many of us are familiar with this passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's known as the love scripture. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it doesn't boast, it's not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Now, think about that chocolate chip cookie. We could read this, but this is like a recipe. And these are great words to live by. Yes, I believe we should model our lives around these verses and these words. But you don't learn this way of living without a community of other people. You can know in your head that love is patient, but then you need to be confronted with an actual experience when you are forced to live out that patience. Which one is Evan Almighty or Bruce Almighty? One of those. He's praying for more patience, more time with his family, and then he's thrust into an opportunity to learn that. That is how it works. So how do we learn the way of love? Well, we need a community of others where we learn to be patient. We learn to let go of some anger, of some unforgiveness. We learn together the way of love. So, for Awaken, how do we create followers of Jesus? By welcoming others into God's love. This is what has been true, I think, from day one about this group, and my prayer is that it would continue to be true about us, so that when anyone walks through that door, they feel welcomed into love, and they have a real, true, felt experience with God.